Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this Civ overview, we're going to be taking a look at the Berbers. Berbers are a great cavalry civilization, with a wide selection of cheap stable units, a cavalry version of the skirmisher at the archery range, a top-tier mounted unique unit, and even their villagers and ships have a bit of extra giddy-up in their step. I always say they're perfect for players who are camel curious, who don't like the idea of committing to full-on camels, but want to be able to sprinkle them in with a bit of an extra bonus. While the civilization tends to get out to a bit of a slower start economically, if you can just hang on until Castle Age in reasonably good shape, after that you're really off to the races. In this video, we'll break down their bonuses, unique units, and tech tree to see how to get the most out of this very fun civilization. To start with their team bonus, Berbers and their allies all have access to the Genitours, as basically a mounted version of the skirmisher. I did a serious deep dive video a few years back, really getting into the weeds of when to prefer the Genitours with and without bloodlines over elite skirmishers, and when skirmishers are better. But at the risk of overgeneralizing, in many cases the Genitours is just a better version, particularly in Imperial Age after its elite upgrade and with bloodlines. They're a little more expensive individually in food cost, which makes sense as there's a second mouth to feed, but have twice as much HP after bloodlines, the same attack and armor, along with pretty similar bonus damage, while offering the crucial advantage of speed. That makes them a particularly good pairing with knights to give you something anti-archer, anti-spear, and anti-cavalry archer, while then not losing anything in terms of mobility. Unlike skirmishers, they can also force engagements against crossbows or cavalry archers as one of their main benefits. The drawbacks are they have one less range than skirmishers, they take longer to produce, and they also take lots of bonus damage from spear units, so you have to be a bit more careful with them. There's also some specific cases, like Genoese crossbows or enemy camel archers, where there's some extra bonus damage you have to watch out for. Now of course, this is a team unit, so it's shared with your allies, and while usually you try to focus mostly on making gold units in team games, pretty much any bonus and unique tech improving skirmishers, cavalry archers, or mounted units will affect Genitours, and can be a nice filler or counter unit option for those civilizations. Turks are arguably the greatest beneficiary, given they miss elite skirmisher entirely, and their unique tech impacts the Genitours, making them ironically top tier. In most cases though, it's just a great counter unit in 1v1s, occasionally helping in team games, while immediately establishing mobility as a big part of the Berbers' secret sauce. Moving on to their proper civ bonuses, the first is their villagers move 5% faster in Dark Age and 10% faster once you hit Feudal. Given how useful Wheelbarrow is, you might think this is a solid eco bonus, but given it doesn't change their carry capacity, the resource collection boost is actually pretty negligible. It ranges from just a 0.5% improvement for miners up to a max of 4 to 5% for the most distant farms. Averaged over your entire economy, it's maybe a 2 or 3% eco boost, which isn't nothing, but also isn't amazing. Romans have 5% to their collection rate and build speed in comparison. The main benefit is instead how much it helps your villagers escape during raids. Men-at-arms and archers go from 12% and 20% faster than villagers to just 2% and 9% faster than Berber villagers respectively, so neither is very effective at chasing them down, which is even more true once you get Wheelbarrow. It's not a tremendously impactful bonus, but is nice for luring boar, makes your farmers a bit better, and every once in a while saves a villager during a raid. In a similar vein, their next bonus is their ships also move 10% faster. Again, it's not a huge speed difference, but can be enough to help you escape a bad engagement or force a more favorable one. Their fishing ships also gain a slight collection boost from this, as well as have the ability to not just match, but straight up outrun enemy fire galleys and fire ships. Fully upgraded Berber trade ships then also become the fastest non-cheat code unit in the game, as a bit of AV2 trivia. Their next bonus is their big one though, with a 15% discount on stable units in Castle Age growing to a 20% discount in Imperial Age. Note this doesn't help a Feudal Age Scout Rush in any way, but as soon as Castle Age comes around, this is by far your most impactful bonus, saving 20 resources on Castle Age Knights and 17 per Camel Rider, then growing to 27 resources on Cavaliers and Imperial, and even 16 food on each Hussar. With 2 stables constantly making knights in early Castle Age for example, the savings are equivalent to having 4 extra free villagers, or even slightly more than that when you take the cost of farms into account. Combining your discounted knights with a few camels gives Berber players great value against enemy knight civs especially, and while you lack paladin in the late game, fully upgraded cavalier with equal resources can give a roughly even trade against paladins without a bonus. With even a few heavy camels sprinkled in, Berbers are often in a pretty good position to take on Paladin civs, and actually have a positive win rate against Franks, Magyars, and Poles. On the flip side, good camel civs like Gurjars, Hindustanis, and Saracens do seem to give Berbers a bit of trouble. So that's their relatively short list of bonuses, giving you a faster version of skirmishers, faster villagers, faster ships, and lots of extra cavalry units from your stables. Next, let's take a look at their excellent unique unit, the Camel Archer. I recently made a deep dive video on this unit and gave my argument for why I consider it a sometimes overlooked top 3 unique unit in the game. But for summary overview purposes, it's slightly more expensive than a Cavalry Archer, but has +1 attack, more HP, and Pierce Armor. Plus, it reloads a bit faster than Cavalry Archers after Thumb Ring. All those little advantages add up, but the most counterintuitive part of the unit comes down to its bonus damage. Unlike all other camels, it has no bonus against cavalry, and instead only deals bonus damage against Cavalry Archers and their variations. Cavalry Archers are quite popular recently, and with units like the Mangudai always being popular, the Camel Archer becomes a bit of an anti-meta specialist, on top of its just great stats and damage output in general. In terms of what the unit does well, beyond just countering Cavalry Archers, it's unusually easy to micro, and with a decent mass they can take on knights or camels, infantry, and even trade reasonably well against the crossbow line head-to-head. The +1 attack also lets them deal more damage than Cavalry Archers or crossbowmen against especially things with high Pierce Armor, like Eagles, Mangonels, Palisade Walls, or Elite Skirmishers, doing in some cases 3 times the damage per shot of a crossbow. On the other hand, they have their weaknesses, including against skirmishers because of bonus damage, and super tanky units like paladins or elephants can also be difficult to take down as well. Monks can also be an effective counter when you're first building up Camel Archer numbers in early Castle Age. Plus, camels as a class also receive a little extra bonus damage from defensive buildings, essentially negating their 1 base Pierce Armor. Admittedly, they're also very expensive to upgrade, as they're affected by just about all the Archer upgrades and stable techs, plus 2 important unique techs at the castle, as well as, of course, an elite upgrade. They're not cheap, but with their upgrades and some micro in the hands of a competent player, they're quietly one of the most formidable unique units in the late game, thanks to the combination of mobility and surprisingly high damage output. Of course, we should look at those important unique techs while we're already at the castle. The first allows everyone's castles on your team, including your own, to work 25% faster. Given how cheap this is and how often your number of castles can be a bottleneck for unique units or trebuchet production, it's nice to grab, and also means researching unique techs and elite upgrades is a little faster as well. Between this and sharing access to Genitours, Berbers are actually quite the team player. Their other unique tech in Imperial Age is significantly more expensive, at 700 food and 300 gold, but gives your camel units 15 HP regeneration per minute. That doesn't sound like a lot, and on paper would take 8 to 10 minutes for an elite Camel Archer or heavy camel to fully heal. But even just healing enough between fights to take 1 or 2 extra shots gives those units quite a bit of unexpected value and helps keep your numbers up, especially if you're trying to conserve your gold. So that's their castle, which adds another dangerous weapon to the Berber toolbox and even more help for a stable unit. Next, let's talk about their surprisingly open and versatile tech tree, starting with the archers. For a cavalry civ, the archery range actually looks pretty good, with the Genitour as a unique alternative to the skirmisher, the hand cannon for when you face a lot of halberdiers, and the cavalry archer is also respectable. They do lack a direct archer bonus and also Arbalester, but outside of that, it's a solid archery range that can at least support your stable units throughout the game, and if we're feeling generous, it's as high as an A-. Next up, for infantry, you have an almost fully upgraded champion line, just missing Gambazins, which can also be an option to keep in the back of your mind against someone going heavily into halberdiers. On the flip side, you're lacking your own halberdiers, as discounted camels are really intended to be your anti-cavalry late game choice. That drags the tech tree down here enough to land at a B-, in my opinion. Moving on to cavalry, they don't get out to a great start with a pretty generic scout rush, but once you hit Castle Age, they can spam knights and camels with the best of them. The lack of paladin isn't the end of the world, as the heavy camel lets you still go head-to-head against good cavalry civs. I'm a big fan of discounts personally, as a respecter of Lanchester's laws, and I'd give them an A at the stable. Next up, for siege, it's again pretty solid, just missing siege ram and siege onager, but with a bombard cannon as a very nice option to support your camel archers or genitours against onagers. Siege ram would have been a nice option here, but with siege engineers, everything is still decent, and enough for a solid B+. Moving on to the navy, of course, faster ships are handy in all sorts of ways, from a boost to your fishing to making sure you're taking just the fights you want on water. I wouldn't quite say Berbers are top tier, but are certainly a respectable B+ early. Later on, they benefit from a full tech tree and still technically have faster ships than other civilizations, so I'd give them another B+ slate for B+ overall. As an interesting fact, Berbers have the highest win rate on islands recently, and their best maps of the last patch have been islands, four lakes, and salt marsh in that order. So maybe I'm underselling them here if anything, and they're being slept on as a pretty good water map pick. Taking a quick look at the monks, they're really not missing much, though what they miss is important. Without Sanctity, they have less HP than many civs, and block printing's +3 range is another important tech, especially against siege. Redemption is nice to have, but without any bonuses, it's hard to justify anything higher than a B. Moving on to defenses, their towers aren't great, but that also makes sense, as Berbers are really all about mobility, so it would be a bit off-brand to rely on towers over army. They have the basics at the university, and towers or the architecture tech rarely if ever occur to me when playing Berbers if things are going well. I'd say it's another B for defenses. As for their trash units, that is, units that don't cost gold, you have nearly the full tech tree, plus the Genitours, which in many cases is a significant upgrade over elite skirmishers in Imperial Age. The obvious blemish is missing Halberdier, which can be limiting against cavalry civs, particularly if you don't have the gold income for camels. Again though, the Hussar is heavily discounted, so there's a few highs and lows here, working out to a strong A-. So that's the Berbers tech tree, with a surprisingly open archery range, barracks, and siege workshop, though of course Berbers always come down to their cavalry. The hardest part of the civ is definitely just making it through feudal age, and their win rate stats in games of different lengths confirm that's really when they struggle. On the one hand, scouts feel like the most natural opening, as it ensures you already have stables ready to go for castle age, though there's a competing argument that after a few scouts, you should switch to making archers to encourage your opponent into skirmishers instead of defensive spearmen. Ideally, that sets up the follow-up knight transition to be just that much stronger. It's good to keep your eye on the fact that your goal, though, is really just to put yourself in a position to limp into castle age however possible, as at that point things can often turn around in a big way thanks to your stable unit discount. Cavalry Archer and Genitours is also a surprisingly good pairing, which gives a lot of the regular Cavalry Archer mobility benefits, but with a little extra protection from archers. While the knight spam gets the most attention, Berbers clearly end up with a lot of valid army compositions in Castle Age. That carries through into the Imperial Age as well, where the stable and Genitours combo continues to be strong, though for me personally, the ideal composition late is elite Camel Archers with throwaway Hussars. The Camel Archer gives you a core gold unit that supplies the DPS and punch, while the discounted Hussars are a perfect meat shield to handle enemy skirmishers or siege. A few bombard cannons or capped rams that take out buildings rounds things out nicely, with the admission that mass halberdier can be an issue for Berbers to deal with, given how many cavalry units you're pushed toward. That's really where having champions or hand cannons in your back pocket is so important to remember. For me, the most underappreciated aspect of the Civ though is really the camo healing, as it's slow enough it feels like it shouldn't be that impactful, but throwing it onto what's already a very tanky mounted archer means they can give insane value if you take care of them. The heart symbol for their healing is also very on brand, with today being Valentine's Day. If the mention of that gives you a moment of panic, realizing you forgot to pick up flowers for that special someone, don't worry, I've got just the thing, with a brand new flower shop I just opened called Spirit of the Love. Stop in today or place an order on the great website I made in minutes, thanks to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a great-looking website, engage with your audience, and then sell anything from products to content to time all in one place. Using their built-in templates, you can easily customize a website to your preferred aesthetic and what you're looking to do with it. That could include selling physical goods or digital content, including access to your own video library, with Squarespace handling the payment side of things so you can focus on the bigger picture. The search engine optimization tools then help your website show up in searches more often, so you can continue to grow and scale your business more effectively. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/spiritofthelaw to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That was a revisit of the Berbers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.